Digital Trust, who works with victims of online threats and abuse, we don't get any of that, of course, Mike, said a security triage system was needed in the House of Commons to help MPs assess the risk. Huge numbers of MPs are getting this kind of abuse. Some of it's very threatening, and I think the police have got to start prioritising investigation. So here we've got the super elite, and the police have got to help these people protect themselves because the public are getting pretty angry. And I just highlighted it on the tweet by saying security gates, police armed with tasers and machine guns, CCTV and dogs. Britain's frightened MPs are now reaping the anger of a public they've lied to, utterly betrayed and mocked for years. And this, for me, is these politicians don't actually know that they're unpopular, Mike. They can't actually work out that the abuse, the perversions, the lies is now coming to fruition. And of course, if we have somebody who's mentally disturbed, that is a tinderbox. But the police are now going to protect them with what? More gates, vetting people in surgeries.
Right. But what this does, Brian, is it highlights the trap, because as soon as we as individuals, we can be as angry and upset with MPs as we like, as soon as we fall into the trap of anger and hate and expressed, yeah. Yes, as soon as we fall into the trap, we give them the opportunity to shut the system down even further. Yep. So we have somehow got to find a way to express ourselves in a peaceful way.
And it's exposing the truth with factual information, of course, because they can't respond to that. If it's factual, if it's correct, and it's hitting the spot, that does the damage. So the harsh words and the abuse and the threats, absolutely unproductive, because it allows them to simply build the dictatorship even faster. Yeah. And what better organisation to help you build that dictatorship than the BBC? And this was just astonishing. A big block on the BBC's website to say how the BBC is unbiased and how it's been ensuring balanced EU referendum coverage. So I obviously had to take a look at this because, of course, the BBC respected worldwide for being truthful. And let's have a look at what they did. Well, this was David Dimbleby in a video as part of the BBC saying how good it is. And he's commenting on chosen audiences. He says there's a BBC team doing audience selections. So hundreds apply, only 150 get selected to come on to the question time type programs. They're asked what gender they are. They're asked how they vote. They asked what they want to talk about. They ask where they are with the EU referendum. And then we put together a balanced audience. Mm-hmm. So you don't look at what the feeling is in the country. You don't have an open door to people to come in. The BBC selects the audience. And he says this, and I think it's very interesting, the cases for change, Brexit, are always more vociferous because they feel passionately. People who vote Remain are less passionate. And what he's really saying is that they've got to manage people who want change to come out. So let's just highlight that. The BBC message is if you're passionate about your country and constitution, you're going to be moderated by the BBC. And then those that want to restore independence and sovereignty are the change agents. So we've got the BBC completely and skillfully twisting reality on its head. It's brilliant,
so therefore,
isn't it?
In order to have a balanced audience, if the people who vote Remain are less passionate, in order to have a balanced audience, you probably have to have more of them in the audience.
Well, they say they have the same, but the point says it all, that we can't have too many Brexit people because they're pretty passionate. Well, too right, they're passionate. So let's get him on screen again. Here he is, Mr. Dimbleby. Big smile, as you can imagine, on a very fat BBC paycheck. And he says this, at that point you have an audience which is chosen, but when they put their hands up, you don't know which bit they represent, i.e. Leave or Remain, or what they're really going to say to you. What he doesn't really get home to people is that the audience has been profiled and selected anyway, so you're not going to get any difficult questions. And then we come to this, which is absolutely fantastic, because we've got the Mirror headline, David Dimbleby makes heartbreaking slip of the tongue after moving tribute to Jo Cox on Question Time. And how does this go? Well, he starts off with the Prime Minister on the podium. Our first question, Prime Minister, comes from Jo Cox. What a terrible thing to say. He then goes on to the first question from this gentleman. I hope I've spelt his name. Our first question comes from Adam Bardi. And the question is, has this referendum soured political debate in this nation in light of the tragic murder of Jo Cox? So what I think is that Dimbleby absolutely knew what the first question was going to be, which is why he had Jo Cox in his head. He knew what was coming. So I'm going to say this is a stitch-up. And it goes on, excuse me, and it gets worse. We've got another BBC political reporter. I don't know this lady's name. I don't really want to know, but I'm sure somebody will tell me. And she says this: you have to balance the political party and the viewpoint, particularly in the run-up to something as important as the EU referendum. So the you is, of course, we. We, the BBC, have to balance political party and viewpoint so that those stupid members of the public can actually understand what's what. And this is it, isn't it? Balance is the weapon by which the BBC drives important debate into the long grass of middle ground and relativism, as opposed to fact and fiction, truth and lies, right and wrong. So here is the BBC boasting that they're controlling the agenda, and then she does this, and you really need to see the video. The interviewer, the BBC interviewer, laughing says, and how do you know that you're achieving this balance? And then she gives this brilliant smirk and says, because there's a massive grid hidden away somewhere. It's like, it is appalling stuff. And these people just laughing at the general public as they skew the political agenda. And it goes on, here's BBC 5 Live, where this man arrogantly says, you start from the position that we're impartial, and everything after that is easy. Except, of course, the BBC is not impartial.
They're deluding themselves that they're impartial?
It's incredible. And, of course, the BBC must be desperate, as it's had to put a whole series of videos on the internet to persuade people it's impartial. And then the arrogance comes in, because the interviewer says, and look, even the microphones are balanced in party colours. No, not really, just a coincidence. So he's talking to the public as if they're children, demeaning, arrogant stuff. And of course, we know these people are biased. Let's give a good example, because 5 Live wanted to interview me on the subject of common purpose. So what did they do? They contacted me to ask if I'd participate in the programme. When I said, come and see the documentary evidence, spend a day with me looking at that evidence, they couldn't come because they didn't have time or the budget out of 3.65 billion.
Yeah.
Then what did they do? They accepted a brief overview from me only. That's the only thing they would accept, a couple of documents. And then they stuck the knife in because they invited Common Purpose onto the programme live, but denied me the same opportunity. And then, of course, what did they put on the programme? Absolutely no evidence, factual evidence about anything. So there's a good bit of unbiased BBC reporting on a pro-EU political charity. Well, bring in Andrew Marr. And the BBC deliberately avoids the elephant in the room. What is that elephant? Well, it's this, isn't it? That we've got our Bilderberger here.
Peter Sutherland.
Peter Sutherland, thank you, Mike. Boasting that the whole purpose of mass migration is to break down nation states. And nobody wants to talk about it. Andrew Marr doesn't want to talk about it. Corbyn doesn't want to talk about it. And we've now got a country full of people getting really angry with the migrants instead of saying, well, who caused this policy in the first place? So BBC, Andrew Marr, political spin at best, lies at worst.